Good evening.
Can't turn your phone. Okay.
Okay, good evening, everyone. This is Travailing Prayer Ministry. We're live today.
Hello.
To share our testimony. Our mission statement is to empower women to walk in their God-given authority, to be free from the power of darkness, and to learn the power of prayer through a personal relationship with God, and to fulfill our destiny while on earth. And so tonight we're going to be telling our testimony, and we're coming from the scripture, Revelation 11. It says, and they overcame him by the blood of the Lamb and by the word of their testimony, and they loved not their lives unto the death. And so we want to empower you today. We thank you, Jesus, right now for the testimony that's going to be brought forth today, oh God. We thank you for it right now in the name of Jesus. Every testimony is precious. We thank you, oh God, for chains being broken through your lives as we share our testimony, because that's how we overcome. We overcome the enemy, because the enemy want us to be secret with our testimony and not share it. But today we're going to share our testimony, no matter what it is, and no matter what we have been through, because it's in the past. God erases all our past, everything that we have done. He erases it, and he doesn't count it against us. So it's nothing that we're going to, we're saying tonight that it's our past, but we got through it through Jesus Christ. And I just thank God for Jesus. Everything that I went through is through Jesus, and that's the reason that I'm here. And so we're going to go, whoever wants to go first. I guess I can go first. And okay, you guys want me to go first? So basically, I'm going to share my testimony of I was in the lowest place in my life. The testimony goes into where basically I was going to be evicted at my apartment, and it was so much stuff going on in the apartment. I had mice problem at that apartment as well, and I was going to be evicted. So I was going through depression. I was going through so much things during that time when I lived in that apartment. And I was not in God at that time. So I was not serving God, wanted him, I didn't know him as my personal savior. And I remember, my daughter was probably 1 month old, and I ended up getting pregnant again. And at that time, I was just didn't know what to do, because I was a mom of a boy at the time, my older son, and then I had my second daughter, and then now I'm pregnant again with a third child. And during that difficult time, I didn't know what to do. I didn't know if I was going to keep the child or not keep the child. And I ended up setting an appointment to have an abortion to kill my child. And I remember at that time that, Jesus, thank you, Jesus, right now. I remember at that time I set up the appointment to have to go through abortion. And during this abortion, I just remember setting it up. I didn't want anyone to know, so I went secretly to have an abortion. No one was with me. No one came along, because I knew people was going to talk me out of getting an abortion. And I remember going in, and there was like, is somebody going to drive you home? I was like, no, I'm going to drive myself home, because if I tell anybody, basically they're not going to be approved of me having an abortion. And when I went in the exam room for me to be examined, I seen, man, I promise you, I was shaking on the exam, bed or whatever it was. I remember shaking, and they had big old tools that sticks in a woman's area, private area, that goes in and really, and I was like, I can't do it. I gotta leave this place. This place, I started shaking, and they was like, and they told me that they won't be able to do abortion on me, because I'm too like, I was wilding. I was like really crazy. And I remember thinking to myself at the time, Lord, I remember like I messed up. You know, I didn't want to do this, but the lady was like, "You go to." I just remember her taking a needle and sticking it in my hand, and when I tell you guys, I was completely gone. I literally was gone, and when she stuck it in this needle in me, I remember I was completely out. And because I was so scared to have an abortion, because I realized that I made a mistake, that that's not something I wanted to do. But when I woke up the next thing I woke up, and it was a gush of blood in my I guess they must have put pad on me and everything, and it was a gush of blood just dripping in a pad, and I just remember I couldn't believe that these people did this to me. But that's the true thing of abortion. It is coming to kill your baby. This is not talked about. This is not being said. But I remember going home after the abortion, and I couldn't believe in my mind that I killed a baby. Like, I mean, even it was, you know, I probably was like 2-3 weeks pregnant, but I remember that I killed the baby, and I was like, can't believe that I did it. I couldn't believe I had killed a child. And for the first time in my life, that's the first time I ever did it. But I remember at that time praying to the Lord and saying, like, Lord, I'm so sorry. I just began to weep and cry that I myself, you know, me knowing I've been in church, I know it's not right to kill an innocent baby. I knew that, but I was not in the Lord at the time. And I remember telling the Lord, I am so sorry for doing that. And it is not what people think. I want you to know that they use instruments to pull your baby out. I don't know what even happened to me. I don't know if something major happened to me, because like I said, the lady took me out with a needle. She said, we can't help you because of the fact that I told them, get me out of here. And I remember she came and she put a needle in me, and I was completely out. So I don't know if they could have did more damage than what I know, because I woke up, the next thing I woke up, the baby was gone. And so, you know, my testimony, so through that, I just remember like praying to the Lord and was like, Lord, I can't get pregnant again, because I don't know what's going to happen to me. I didn't know what to think at that moment. And, but, you know, over the year, you know, not too long after that, I end up, maybe it's been a year later that I ended up giving my life to the Lord. And that's even a testimony in itself, because I remember going to my friend's house, and I had to go visit her. We was gonna go, I think she was having a cookout at her house, and I heard the Holy Spirit said, this is my first time hearing the Holy Spirit voice, but I heard the voice say, hey, leave now to your friend's house. And I rushed over to my friend's house, and when I got there, it was people witnessing on her street. They were actually about to leave. And it was so amazing, because I heard the Holy Spirit say, go now to your friend's house. And so when I went to my friend's house, I end up, the people that was there, the people that was witnessing, they were far away, very distant. And they end up coming to me. They was like, hey, you. And I was like, where is the person? I was like, because, I just heard the voice of the Holy Spirit, or voice at the house. It must be the voice of God. So, and so I'm thinking like, okay, I'm really losing it, because this is another voice speaking to me, and it's from afar, but I hear it. And so, but the girl ended up coming to me. She ended up witnessing to me. And through that, I end up, they was having a back to school book bag thing for kids. My son at the time, he was very young. He was actually either in kindergarten or pre-K. And so I went to it, and it was my first time experiencing love, and I think that's the missing ingredient as a Christian is, they had so much love that I remember at that moment that I was being approached, seeing them giving the book bags out. It was so much love that I remember saying in my heart, I want to become a Christian. And I remember that particular incident. I told them I would never join their church. I'm not going to church. I don't believe in church, all this stuff. And the first time in my life in years, I ended up going to church, and you know, I got saved that day. I got saved that day. I got saved that day. The next day after the back to school book bag they had, and I just want to say that, you know, even though I had an abortion and God has forgiven me, I'm gonna meet my child in heaven. That's gonna be waiting for me when I get there. I want to tell you guys that it's nothing that Jesus cannot do. It's nothing that Jesus cannot do for you. He made us to be an overcomer over anything, and that it still haunts me from time to time. But I just thank God that He knows that, you know, my child knows that I love them, and that was something that happened to me back then that I did. But I just want to know that I know that my child will see me when I make it into heaven, because I'm going to heaven to see my baby. In the name of Jesus. That's all my testimony.
Thank you so much for sharing that with all of us. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Well, you don't cause me to have to change my testimony. My testimony that I was going to originally give, I'm not going to say it anymore because I remember God actually was dealing with me specifically about it, and I was like, I don't want to talk about it. The reason why I didn't want to necessarily talk about it was, and now I know I really need to. And thank you for sharing your testimony, because now you about to have me crying. When I was 16 years old, I've been with my husband since I was in high school. And when I was 16 years old, I actually ended up getting pregnant. And it was actually a few months after my mom had my sister. And I got pregnant, and I didn't want anybody to know about it. I tried to have my cousin take me to the hospital because I just remember one day I was at school. I was actually, for like a week straight, every woman knows that when you get pregnant, you're tired on a whole nother level. And I wasn't staying up. It wasn't like I wasn't getting enough rest. I was exhausted. And I never experienced that kind of, tiredness before. And I was coming to class late. I would do my work, and I would just go to sleep. And thank God I had a teacher that really knew me and kind of understood me. So she knew that there was something wrong. And so I remember one day I literally slept through 2 periods of school. Wow. Yeah, I would go to the first period. I'll do my work and I'll go to sleep. Second period, I would just sleep the whole time. And then I would go straight to third period, and I would still be kind of sleepy, but I would be able to function. And so I remember I would sleep, and when I woke up, I woke up when the bell rang to go in the third period, and when I stood up, a gush of blood just started coming out. Wow. But the thing was, I knew on the inside, something told me that I was pregnant. I didn't want to believe it. A lot of women, some women, when they find out that they're pregnant, that they kind of spot a little bit and stuff. So I had that before, and so I had already kind of knew. And my husband now, but he was my boyfriend then. We kind of like suspected, but we never did anything about it. And he was in and out of the hospital at that time. And so when I stood up, and a gush of blood just started coming out, and I ran to my third period class. And I remember I threw my book bag. I threw my book bag down, and I told my teacher I needed to go to the bathroom, and she said, okay. And I was like, and that teacher I was really close to, so she knew what really was going on at the time. And I was like, I don't know. I think I just had a miscarriage. And she's like, what? And I ran to the bathroom. And when I went inside the bathroom, it was nothing. Thank you. It was nothing but clots. I just saw nothing but clots in the toilet, all over my clothes. It was on my clothes. And when I ran to the nurse office and tried to get, you know, like a sanitary napkin, and they told me, and I knew how much blood was coming out of me, and I was like, I need more than one. I need more than one. And I'm thinking, because I wanted to keep it a secret, I was thinking that I could deal with it. You know, like I could self-medicate myself, you know, not like drugs or nothing, but treat it as if it was like my normal period. But I was in like excruciating pain. I remember I went home and I went straight to the bed, and I told my cousin, because I was trying to get my cousin to take me to the hospital and try to make it seem like I was just hanging out with my cousin, but he really was going to be taking me to the hospital, but he couldn't. And so the next day I went to school, and I still have a lot of blood coming out.
Jesus.
And I was just in it. I remember I was in first period, and I was asleep, and then I woke up and I was just crying, and then like my eyes was like jet red and puffy from crying last night, that day. And so the teacher, she brought me out, she said, "What's wrong?" And then I just started crying in the hallway, and I was like, "I just lost my baby." And she was like, "Alexis," she was like, "you can kill yourself. You need to go to the hospital." And I was like, "I can't have my mom find out." I was like terrified. I was like, I can't tell my parents. They can't know. And she was like, "No, you need to go to the hospital." And so I ended up calling my stepmom, and my stepmom told my dad what was going on. But my dad tried to tell me that I had an STD. But I knew what was going on the inside. You know how sometimes God would tell you what's really going on with you, even though other people don't know. Other people would say whatever it is, but you know, and it's up to you to stand firm with what God had told you. And so when we go to the hospital, my dad took me, and he was trying to say that I had an STD. And I was just like, I know I don't, you know, I didn't say it out loud, but I knew I didn't have an STD. I knew what was going on. And so when we went to the doctor, one second. When we went to the hospital, and I was telling the lady what was going on and the pain that I was going through, I had so much pain that they actually ended up having to inject morphine in me.
Wow.
I couldn't move too much, and so what ended up happening was she told me that I had a very early miscarriage. And because I was only like a few weeks. I wasn't even like 9 weeks. I was only a few weeks, and she said, "You had a very early miscarriage." And you know, I was trying to, you know, take it in, like, you know, act as if it didn't affect me. But on the inside, it truly affected me, because I constantly kept seeing those clots in the toilet. And I was just like, I flushed my baby in the toilet. Like, you know, I carried that for a long time. I was like, I can't believe, you know. And then when I told him what happened, he was crying, and he was trying to figure out what was going on. There was a lot going on with him. He was in and out of the hospital. And so my dad, he tells me, he said, "You have to tell your mom." And I was like, I don't want to tell her. At the time, we didn't have a really good relationship. And so I didn't really trust my mom to tell her anything. And I didn't want to get yelled at for something that I already knew that, you know, I as a kid, I beat myself up a lot when I did something I knew it wasn't right. So the last thing I wanted to do was tell somebody something so they can beat me up even more than what I already felt. You know, and so when I finally told my mom what happened, she didn't believe me. She said, no, you didn't. You didn't have a miscarriage. That was just your period. You shouldn't have never, you know, you shouldn't be having sex and stuff. And I'm like, I know I shouldn't be having sex, but I'm like, I know what I saw. You know, I know what happened to me. I know, like, I've never felt that kind of pain. I've never in my life experienced that. Even now as an adult, since then, I've never ever went through anything like that before. And so I knew for a fact what it was, and I was just like, okay, like, I can't, you know, for me telling my dad is in the room and the doctor's telling you what it was, and you don't believe them, and, you know, then I'm telling you, and, you know, telling my mom, and I'm like, you don't believe me. You know, that's kind of almost made me feel like why I wanted to keep it a secret and stuff. But it needed to come out, because what ended up happening was I ended up going to a really deep depression, really bad, to the point that I actually placed myself in. I ended up having to go into the hospital because I was stressed out and so depressed that I caused my acid to actually rise to a abnormal level. So I had acid reflux, and I was in the hospital for a week. I was on antidepressant medicine. I was on like hydrocodone and stuff like that because I was in excruciating pain to the place like I couldn't lift up my arms. I couldn't stand up on certain stuff. It was really bad. And so, and so then when I got older and actually, got pregnant with my oldest son and we got married and stuff, I ended up going into depression. And so it was like a cycle where every time I had a kid, I went in some kind of depression. But I just thank God because God can deliver you from any and every kind of mental illness that tries to come upon you. Anytime when people try to tell you, don't ever let anyone tell you something other than what you already know. Don't allow, friends or family, anybody that's close to you to try to tell you something completely opposite of what God has already told you. And don't allow the devil to steal your joy, because for years I kept going back. It was a straight spirit of heaviness. It was just straight heaviness every time September will roll around or October will roll around. It was September. Every time September would roll around, I was always sad. I was just like, oh my gosh, this was the day that I lost my baby. And I was like, I cannot allow myself to be like that. I cannot allow myself to be angry towards my husband over something that I could not control, over something that I tried to hold a secret, and I allowed that secret to even cause me to go into the hospital. The devil he doesn't want anybody to know any kind of testimony that God has truly allowed you to overcome. It was just because it was to the point where I actually one of my friends and I, we both was pregnant around the same time, and I used to look at it and was like, wow, my kid would be her kid's age, but then I look back and I look at it and I just say, but God, because what God saved me from was being 16 years old and pregnant. I didn't have a job. I didn't get a job until I was almost 18 years old. And so, God had me to be able to help my mom while she was a single mother, because I could have been a single mom. And so he had me to be able to help my mom raise my sister to who she is now. Because if that was, I wouldn't have been able to do my kid and her kid only, a few months apart and different things like that. And so I just really just thank God. I feel like a weight is lifted. I really just thank God because just like Miss Margie said, I know when I make it into heaven that I will see my child, because I know it's a reason, because babies are always a blessing. Babies are always miracles, regardless of how they come, whether they came the right way or the wrong way. Yes. Because I'm telling you, my oldest child rather, I was not where I should have been. And he saved my life, because I don't know where I would be at if I did not have him. And I don't know, because even after I had him, I was still making mistakes. So I don't even know where I would be if I didn't have my second child, because my second child he literally is what causes us to just, it reminds me to say, Alexis, you have to be responsible. He is a reminder every day to both my husband and I that we have to make sure that we keep a place over our head, because sometimes you still make the same mistakes even when kids come. But I just thank God, because I have my kids, and my kids just taught me how to love, because I didn't know how to love, because my parents didn't know how to love properly. And so my kids teaches me every day how to love. But not only that, they teach me patience. They teach me how to be kind. They teach me all different kinds of things. And also they teach me responsibility, not because I have to keep them alive, but responsibility of keeping a roof over my head, to make the decisions that I should and need to make. And so I just thank God, because I just love God, because even though he took one to save my life, he still blessed me with two that also saved my life. So I just thank God for that.
Thank you for sharing. So awesome.
I'm probably gonna have to switch with you and like this. Yeah. She just was like, I can just come over here. Okay. Yeah, it's still kind of dark. Okay, you want to go over here? Okay, switch over. Okay, you should have kept it. That was a great testimony, Alexis. Thank you for that. Oh, that was a good testimony. So, my name is Alyssa, and I'm going to share more about my past and like the rejection that I felt from my parents, from just growing up with feeling like I was always rejected. I wasn't loved. I wasn't cared for, any of that stuff. So to begin as a young girl, you know, what I can remember most is that, you know, growing up with my mother on drugs. She was there. We did have a roof over our head and all of that. But in a nutshell, you know, she never really spent any time with me. So I always had that feeling of just longing to be in my mom's presence, even though she was a great mother. I don't want to, you know, get that mistaken or, you know, mixed up. So just to fast forward past that, probably around when I was about 9 or 10, she ended up going to jail for her drug habit. So at this time, they were trying to, I guess, learn where to put me, you know, as far as my mother. And keep in mind, I do have a father, and he is in Columbus, Ohio. So at first, I was staying with one of my aunts, and then, you know, I don't know what necessarily transpired there, but I ended up moving from there. So boom, another rejection hit me. Mm-hmm. And then I'm staying with another aunt. And then I ended up moving from there and going to stay with my father. So there's another rejection that hit me. And then I'm staying with my father, and, you know, I'm acting out at this time. You know, I just want to be around my mother. No one's telling me anything. I know I'm a young girl, but now I'm with this stranger that I barely know. You know, even though he's my father, he was never really consistently in my life. So when they placed me there, I just felt like I don't even know him or his wife. And I'm just here, you know, with these strangers, even though it's my dad on paper. To me inside, I didn't really know who he was. So even living there, you know, he never really spent any time with me. He worked a lot. Mm-hmm. You know, he never just, you know, supported anything I did, never really said he loved me, never just spent any type of any time with me. You know, it was just in and out, work, you know, taking care of the household because my stepmom didn't work. And so, you know, she spent time with me in the moments that she could, and, you know, trying to fill that void. And but still, I was just longing for my mother's love, my father's love, you know, just love from my parents. So then I started getting in trouble in school and acting out and fighting. And, you know, I'm still getting good grades in school, but acting out, just not wanting, I didn't want to be in Columbus. So I would get really bad whoopings from my parents. I mean, really bad whoopings from my dad. Just terrible whoopings that and it's only one in particular that he gave me, but my stepmom was really the enforcer behind it because my dad was at work. And after the time that he whooped me, I'm glad that she was the enforcer, because, you know, I never want to experience that again, you know. And it was definitely devastating for me that he would do that to me, like his only child, you know. And I really had to bite down on that, and God dealt with me with it later on, but it affected me growing up because I couldn't understand this man that I barely know, that I'm his only daughter though, that he can put his hands on me in that way, in that manner, to cause me to be bleeding, and just all of this as a young girl, you know. I didn't understand it. And so I was always really afraid of my dad after that moment. I didn't want any closeness. I just went into a shell. I ran away, did all these things. So when I ran away, when I came, you know, when they eventually found me, I think I ended up going to a hospital or something like that. And they had got a hold of my dad. And, you know, I was telling them about my whoopings I would get at home and how they were bad. My stepmom would absolutely whoop me really bad. I remember going to school with welches on my arms
from her beating me with a belt. And as though she doesn't remember this, I remember very vividly getting beating with going to school, you know, pulling down my sleeves so nobody can see it, almost like I'm trying to hide the secret of getting beat by, you know, my stepmom, you know, even though I'm acting out, but they never really tried to get to the core of why I was. They didn't understand it. So when I ran away, I told them everything. I was like, I don't want to go back. They, you know, they beat me, you know, they're going to give me another whooping and all of this. And so when I told them, and there was children's services involved, my dad ended up sending me back to, back home to Ashtabula. So boom, another rejection hit me because, you know, I can understand this is my father, even though I barely knew him, you know, you're still my father. You know what I mean? So you should try to understand me. But as a young girl, I didn't know. I just felt like, you know, nobody wanted me. Nobody loves me. Nobody cared about me. I felt like I was just, as a young girl, walking around on this earth just with nothing or no one in my life. I just didn't feel any sense of anything. So, you know, as my mom came out, when she came out, and I was around 15, she's been clean since I've been 15. I'm 33 now. So I am proud of her. I love her. She's awesome. But when she came out of jail, I was, you know, she wasn't really strict on me. I still had a lot of anger and resentment towards her for feeling like she left me. That rejection, that abandonment from my parents was still lingering in me. So even though I was excelling in school and I was good in sports, inside I was warring with a bad demon. Inside I was just going through just things I did not know were in there. I was very angry. And so I wasn't fighting at the time with my mom. I was never getting suspended from school then, but I was arguing with her. You know, I had a boyfriend. We were having sex. I was young, having sex, trying to hold on to him as my high school sweetheart. You know, even with that, being in that, STDs, he gave me a couple of STDs, and I still continue to take him back because I'm trying to hold on to that love that I needed from my father. I was trying to hold on to that love that I needed from my parents. And I'm like, okay, this is happening, but let me just hold on to it. Let me just, you know, I don't want to let him go. And he would always say, oh, I'm sorry, and da-da-da. And of course I would take him back. I didn't know any better. So around college time, he did eventually just leave me. Like I tried to call him. I was so sick about it. And so boom, another rejection comes in. So at this time, I go into stripping. So then I am in the entertainment business, and I'm just looking for love. But at the time, I was more out for revenge, I think. I really didn't want a man in my life. I wanted to do them the way they did me. Like, I wanted to treat them that way. I wanted to hurt them the way I felt inside. So I really wasn't on having a man in my life. It was more about just getting what I can get from them and moving on to the next. So that's what that led me into stripping. And then from stripping, I was drinking. And, you know, in the beginning, it was just dancing. But then it led into drinking. And then it led into cocaine. Then it led into ecstasy pills. Then it led into sex. And I'm talking about sex with women too, threesomes with women and men, with married couples. These are things that I engaged in. You know what I mean? I definitely engaged in these things for the money, you know, and so I'm doing all of this, and it's still not giving me any feeling, any sense of anything. And I think around this time I was just like, Lord, what is wrong? You know, I'm just out of it. I did not know how to get to him, but I just kept feeling a pull to Jesus, you know, and I just thank my grandmother for taking me to church and me knowing a little bit about him, that I kept feeling a pull. So around this time when I first got to know him, I was staying with my grandmother, and I was reading her Bible that she had in one of the rooms, and I really got to know him. And I just remember feeling all these butterfly feelings and all these tinglies. And, you know, around this time, I think I was about 23 or 24. And I remember first just getting to know who he was, but I still wasn't grounded because I did not really know who I was. I still didn't, you know, I didn't have enough support around me to really, to push me in, to keep me in. So I ended up falling out of that and going back to my old ways and doing those things. And then, you know, when I got serious about the Lord, just to fast forward, I don't want to take everyone's time. When I got really serious about the Lord and turned my life around, it's a lot of things that I had to deal with. God had to deal with me about the rejection issue, about the unforgiveness. I had to call my dad and ask my dad for forgiveness. That is not something I wanted to do because I didn't feel like I did anything wrong. But in order for God to do the work in me, I had to do the work. I had to do what he was telling me to do. So I had to ask him for forgiveness. I had to, you know, call him, you know, my mother. I had to do so much to get this off of me. And then even with that, it was so much that came with that, all kind of things that came along with that. But in the nutshell of it, what I'm saying is that even though you feel abandoned in your life, just know that there's a Jesus that loves you, and he does not leave you nor forsake you, that he is there even to the least of us. Like I said, I've been through some things in my life. Oh my goodness, we'd be on this thing all day if I told you everything, you know, but the main point is to say that he's my father first, that he's my lover first. And when I got before him, that's what cleaned me up. He was the only one that could deal with that rejection, with that pain, with that deep-rooted hurt. No counselor, no other person, no mother, no sister, nobody else could do it but Jesus. There's nobody else that could really get into the inside of me. And I remember crying out to God because I was so messed up on the inside. And he was just there listening, crying out to him, boo-hoo, and snot everywhere, you know, and he just lifted me and he made me deal with the things I had to deal with. But to just tell you that regardless of who didn't want you, if your dad never talked to you, if your mother never talked to you, if they abandoned you, if they walked out on you, just remember that there is a Jesus that loves you and that he wants you to be in his life and that he is our Savior. So don't ever forget that, because the way I'm looking at things I got now is only because of his grace in my life. Because I should have been dead when I was in the strip club. Before that, having sex at a young age, doing those things I had no business of doing. Just because I did not know any better doesn't mean that it's not sin. So I'm here to tell you guys, if it happened to you, just know that he loves you and he wants a relationship with you, and he'll do anything to keep searching for you. That he sent us on these airways to tell you that he is able to cleanse you. I am cleansed. I talk to my dad frequently. I talk to my mother frequently. I have no resentment in my heart for them, and that only comes from the love of the Lord. So I just wanted to share that with you guys, and I hope you get something out of it. Love you all.
Amen. Thank you for sharing that. So awesome.
Oh,
Hello, everyone.
Hey.
My name is Stephanie, and I'll be sharing my testimony. And just to start, I did myself as well grow up without my father, and my mom, she raised me, but she was a drug addict, so I didn't get the love from her either. And so I was in search of love, and I looked for it in men in a relationship. I started dating young. I started having sex at a young age, even with different men, and I was just completely lost. And I had my first child at the age of 15. I was in high school, and after that relationship, just still lost, I ended up getting with a guy that I barely knew. That guy, he didn't have a job. I basically hooked up with him because, you know, I had my own identity crisis. I didn't know who I was, and, you know, I was just completely lost. And, you know, I gave myself away to him, having sex with him unprotectedly, caught an STD as well, and still stayed in that relationship, and even got pregnant really soon by this guy. And even in that relationship, I noticed anger issues and ignored all the signs. I used to think that it was funny in a way because I didn't understand a grown guy getting so upset and, you know, seeing that it was really serious, like this is how this person is acting. And, you know, I just thought it would go away, but, you know, it kept going and I would just ignore the signs. And I had left a good guy because before meeting him, I was in a relationship with a good guy, but I ended up leaving that good guy thinking that I would have a better life with this guy, and my life actually got worse. During that pregnancy with him, it was very stressful. I didn't have a stable home. I was living place to place. I remember even sleeping at a church home, going to work, you know, really big, pregnant, waking up early, washing our face, brushing our teeth in the bathroom at the church, and going to work, and taking my first daughter to school, you know, just basically homeless and pregnant with this guy that, you know, I didn't know, but fell in love so quick because I thought I loved him and, you know, thought that everything would be okay, but, you know, he couldn't support me. And I married him within 8 months of the relationship, so everything was really, really fast. I was very uncertain about the marriage because, like I said, I noticed the anger issues but ignored it. And, you know, at the time we started going to church together. Before going to church together, we both were working, but, you know, he still wasn't able to provide a home or anything for us. But working, eventually went to church and speaking with the pastor, he knows what's going on, you know, advised us to, you know, get married. And so everything was really fast, but I was really uncertain, but I still made the decision to marry this guy. And when we got our first apartment, he became family with the streets instead of, you know, with me and our children. And he was on drugs and alcohol really bad. We would always fight over money and car. He would want control and want possession of those things. And he would be really aggressive with me, that it really instilled so much fear on the inside of me, not knowing, you know, what happened to me. When he would get so upset, I would many of times feel like I was in the very presence of the devil. And so I was just so scared at times, and that's what went on in that relationship a lot. And one thing that I remember vividly that, you know, I haven't even shared, that, you know, is so embarrassing and shameful, because, you know, when you're with someone, you think you love them and this is the person. But I remember on my 22nd, 23rd birthday, something like that, he actually slapped me in my face on my birthday. And that's something that I'll never forget because that was on my birthday. So I remember that, and that was shameful, you know, that ruined my day. And so, you know, I'm with this guy thinking that it's love, but I was really being treated bad. Eventually he had stopped working and he no longer had an interest to work and help support our family. So that left me being the only one working and providing and taking care of bills while he was still just running around in the streets, you know, taking a car, driving around with people and things like that. And mind you, I'm the one paying the insurance on the car and, you know, just all those different things. And in the midst, I ended up getting pregnant again with another child by this same man. And it was another stressful pregnancy, you know, same arguing and fighting and just really, you know, being controlling. And I had filed any I had filed a restraining order actually before that second pregnancy, but I ended up breaking, you know, the rules and code to that because you're not supposed to have no contact, you know, things like that. But I still end up talking with him and still like coming back together with him. And so I never went through the whole process of continuing the restraining order and things like that. And so when the lease was up at that first apartment we got together, I moved to another place and I let him come. Before I decided to let him come, I was planning in my mind to just leave without him and not let him come, but then I eventually just let him come with me as well to the new place. And after moving into that new place, 2 weeks exactly after moving in there, our apartment got raided by the police. And I didn't understand why or what was going on or things like that until later on. And at that time, you know, I'm pregnant, second pregnancy. I'm still the only one working. He didn't have any job. At that new place we were living at, he became family with the street people there. And, you know, it was still another stressful pregnancy. And when I had my baby, I stopped working. And before I even stopped working, I was getting behind on my bills. You know, only one income can only do so much. And so eventually we got evicted. And so we didn't have no place to go. My mom had actually paid for a hotel for us to go to for a month and a rental car for us to still get around and, you know, things like that. And so at this point, I have 3 kids living in a hotel, no job, no anything. And, you know, I'm still with the same man. And he had got a job, but it didn't last, you know, for a long time. And then after living at the hotel, went to his family house, and I started a job working there. But during the time period, I had suspicions about him and his sister friend about, you know, just him going off, smoking, you know, things like that. Mentioned we're married and, you know, everything was just basically out of order. And I was getting to a point where I was just tired of the disrespect and, you know, trying everything to make this relationship work, and it still wasn't working. And what I did the first time when he slapped me on my birthday that I didn't mention was we were talking about something and I threw my ring off. And so that made him mad, and that's what made him slap me. And so fast forwarding back to this event with the suspicions with him and his sister friend, we were arguing about something outside, and I did the same thing. I threw my ring off, and I could tell he was coming for me. So I ran in the house into the room where the lady of the house was, and I began to just talk with her about my relationship with me. And I'm sure that, you know, she talked with her husband later that night, and they helped me to get away. And so I ended up moving to a shelter with my children. This was around the time when him and his mom went on a trip, so he had no idea, or he was just clueless about what was going on. You know, he just thought I was leaving out that morning to go to work, but, you know, I had a whole plan, like, to get away. And the shelter was really far south in Georgia. I didn't like it. And it was really hard to get around, no transportation and all the different requirements that were needed there. And I wasn't able to meet it, you know, having to go find a job, but, you know, no transportation. They don't help with transportation. It was just all these different obstacles. And so I had moved to my brother's apartment, and I had got back in touch with him. And so he came, and then around that time, I found out that I was pregnant with a third baby by him. And at that point, I was just really distressed because I knew that I was not in no shape to have another baby, and that my life was just a wreck. And, you know, I wasn't even staying in my own place. I just thought that it was, you know, the worst thing that could have happened, that I could have found out at that time. But I eventually moved with my mom. She was staying at a hotel, and I moved with her instead of to his sister house with him, because I knew it would be the same routine of just him leaving us in the house, me and the kids, and he leave off with the car and things like that. And so after, you know, a big fight and over the car and things like that, he had actually kept the car away from me, and I was waking up early every morning at the hotel I was staying with my mom. I was waking up every morning, taking my oldest daughter to school by bus, and you know I was pregnant, so I was walking to the bus stop and walking off the bus to get her to school. And, you know, he had the car, just, you know, doing whatever, you know, he wanted to do with the car. And it was one day that we agreed that he would give me the car. And so when he came to bring me the car that night, we began to argue. And I remember him even calling, you know, someone over the phone and saying that, you know, he don't love me, don't want to be married with me. And we end up riding to the store, and he became angry with me because I kept asking, you know, I need to get the car, I need to, you know, get back in the house and things like that. But he became angry with me, and he even tried to drag me out of the car while I was pregnant. And I remember falling and hitting the curb. And, you know, I was pregnant, and so I was in mild pain, but he didn't show any sense of care. Like, he didn't care. And when we were in the store parking lot, that was my chance to basically steal the car from him. He didn't know that I had my key with me, but I had it with me, but I had to move so fast because I knew it was going to be a fight. And so as soon as he went in the store and I seen the door shut, I jumped in the driver's seat and I cranked the car and left. It was as if I stolen a car. And that's how I had to take my car that I was paying for away from him, because he was not trying to give it to me. And so I drove the car to a safe location where I knew he wouldn't know where it was at and things like that, where he couldn't go pick it up. And I called the ambulance and explained everything that was going on. And when I went to the ambulance, I went to the hospital, everything was fine, and I was released from the hospital. And, you know, meanwhile, he's blowing my phone up and all these different things. And that was my way of getting away, of not dealing with him anymore. And my mom eventually got an apartment after the hotel, and she let me and the kids move in with her. And at this time, you know, he had no idea that we had moved from that hotel with my mom to the apartment. And he didn't know where we were at or anything. I wasn't in contact with him or things like that. But I eventually started back talking to him. This was around Christmas. You know, the kids were asking about him and, you know, if they're going to see him and things like that. And one of my kids, the oldest one, her birthday is around Christmas. And, you know, when I finally spoke with him, you know, he's asking about the kids, you know, like he cares and, you know, loves us and wants to do right and things like that. And so he came over, and then he started coming around all the time again at my mom's apartment where we were staying at that time. And he immediately started hanging out again, you know, with the people there in the neighborhood, and taking the car and leaving me and the kids at my mom's house, you know, once again, just the same cycle. And I started working at that time until I had my baby, and he was still the same, and he didn't want to change. One night he got stopped by the police for smoking, and they were going to let him go, release him, but he was wanted for a murder case. And so at 3 weeks old, my baby boy that I just had, and it was actually on the child before the son, on her first birthday, he went to jail. And so I had moved from my mom's house to my mother-in-law house because at that time, me and my mom were having a lot of arguments and things like that, and I was ready to leave. And when I moved in to my mother-in-law house, that's when I really began to really kind of go forward and praying more and drawing closer to God and really just seeking Him more and fasting. And even during the time that I stayed with my mother-in-law, I was applying to so many jobs, like even the easiest of jobs, and I just couldn't get a job. I could not get a job. So basically my life at my mother-in-law house was just being at home every day. You know, I did clean and, you know, care for my kids. And even while my husband was in jail, I was still going to see him. And I remember even talking with him over the phone while he was at jail, having a really bad argument. And I saw that the anger was still there inside of him. And after a year of staying with my mother-in-law, I got a job. I had filed my taxes, got my taxes, and I got my car fixed. I was able to get an apartment and pay off the eviction that was on my credit from when I got evicted a few years back. And even after that, after moving into my own place, I was still in contact with my husband, going to see him and, you know, taking my kids up there to see him. And I began to see some changes, a little humble, but overall, you know, it was still it's much the same. It's really hard to see when the enemy tries to really keep you blind and, you know, make you believe that, you know, oh, this person, you know, is very new and, you know, things like that. But it really takes, you know, the Spirit of God to really reveal, you know, things to you for you to actually see when you been blind for so long and you don't see it. And, you know, so now at this point, married but living a single life, taking care of 4 kids on my own, you know, it's not easy. And, you know, he would still ask me for money and I would still send it thinking that, you know, I need to be a good wife, support him and help him and things like that. And so when he got switched to a prison, I had talked to him over the phone, but I hadn't seen him at the location that he was at. And the beginning of this year, actually of 2019, this awesome ministry that I'm a part of, we went on a fast for 7 days. And I had saw him weeks after the fast, and I wasn't certain if it was God's will for me to go, but his birthday was that month and wanted to go see him for his birthday and take the kids, but I really didn't take a deep thought into consideration about all the deliverance and all the breakthrough that had happened for me during that fast. And so when I went to go see him, I really got reinfected by all the things that I was delivered from by going to see him at the prison that he's at. And so I still would talk to him over the phone, but I didn't really sense him really pressing, you know, towards God or really pressing into God, you know, just listening in from hearing certain conversations. And when as I'm doing, you know, another consecration to the Lord, is no contact with him. And, you know, God has just been revealing, you know, so much to me about who this man that, you know, I thought I loved really is. And, you know, how I wanted a family, but he really has not been the family person. And how I just really wanted the relationship and marriage to work for my kids' sake, so they wouldn't grow up without a father like I did. But as I said, you know, I'm taking care of them by myself right now, so they're growing up without the father. The cycle is right now is still going on. And so God really has me at a point of just really, you know, receiving his love, because he's been loving me this whole time. And I've been ignoring Jesus and putting my attention on the man that I wanted to love me. But God has really just been changing my life since being separated from this man. And you know, it's so sad to say that it's been changing for the good, because I wanted it to be good with him, but it's been nothing but bad, you know, with him. And you know, I've been married to this person for 4 years, and we've been separated going on 2 years. And during the 2 years, God has just really brought me into a place of really loving on him and putting him first and thinking about him and living for him and focusing on who Stephanie is and learning who Stephanie is and, you know, figuring out what God's will is for my life. And so I just really want to encourage anyone out there, you know, who's in a bad relationship, who may be going through abuse or, you know, anything like that. If you're not, you know, there's no serious attachments. If you're not married, you know, you can walk away. You know, it's not hard. You can walk away. You know, you have to do what's best for you. And so that's what God is doing with me. He's opening my eyes. He's trying to help me to see what's best for me and how to be a better woman, a better example for my daughters, for my children, to, you know, show them how they should be treated when they get older, because I don't want them to go through any of the things that, you know, I went through. And so I have to be the one to change and to do better for them so that they don't follow in my same footsteps, because if not, then they will go through what I went through, if not worse. And so I just really want to encourage you to know that you are special, you are beautiful, you are fearfully and wonderfully made, you are strong and not weak, and you are the apple of God's eye. He loves you. And no matter what, you know, any man has said or done to you, called you out of your name, I've been through all that, I've been called all of that, but God, he still loves us and he cherishes us and he wants us to know that he loves us and wants to be with us and will be, you know, everything that we need him to be. And, you know, I was with a man who couldn't provide for me. God has provided for me since I've been away from that man. God has provided for me. And so I just want to share that with you all, to know you don't have to stay in a bad, abusive relationship, and that, you know, you can get your confidence back in God. And that's what I'm doing, because my confidence and self-esteem was so low. The way he would treat me and talk to me, you know, I just felt unworthy. And so God is really just healing me during this time and restoring me and just really giving me everything that I had lost, that the enemy has taken from me. And so I just want to encourage you all to do what is best for you, do what is best for your children, and don't worry about what the naysayers say, because everyone's going to have something to say, but you have to worry about what Jesus says. And so I just want to encourage you all to stick with the Lord, because that's the best thing that I've been doing, is sticking with him. And he's been nothing but good to me, very good, beyond good. I will be on here for forever if I explain the goodness of God. So that's my testimony I want to share. I love you all, and we just thank you so much for listening to us.
Well, thank you so much for listening and listening to all our testimony. And I know you got something out of it, because every story was different and every story had its own story. Everybody has a story, and we just thank you for listening. And we love you from Travailing Prayer Ministry. Thanks for listening. We love you guys.